What's up, guys? Hopefully you can hear me. If you can hear me, let me know. What's up? What's up? Great. I'm going to try to set up Instagram too. Yeah, I know Kies is today. It's a little trip for me, so I haven't made it yet. Just a sec, guys. I'm starting up Instagram at the same time. Let's see if we can get this to work. Hopefully the stream looks better. I got a new laptop. It still doesn't look super great. All right. What's going on? Cool. All right, so we got Instagram and YouTube going at the same time. I'm going to prioritize YouTube just because more people usually join. We'll kind of see, but I set up both YouTube and Instagram, so hopefully everybody has an opportunity. Happy Sunday. What's up? I know it's been a while. I haven't streamed since like December, I think. Perfect timing. Yeah, I did just post a video yesterday, didn't I? Things have been crazy, man. I was actually off work this week, so I completely reorganized my garage. I can't say I cleaned it up because I don't have any extra space, but I have more access to the things I need. So I might sound a little different. There was a bunch of stuff on this wall, and now it's just completely bare. So you guys might be hearing more echoes and stuff. You want to talk about TSI things? I don't have a TSI engine bay to stare at anymore, so it's a little bit different. Yeah, you guys, I should do a garage tour because now it looks like something. And I won't say I'm super proud of it. I still got a lot of work to do, but it's a lot better than it was before. It's at least organized. So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna try to do live streaming more often. Hopefully at least once a month. I've just been super busy. So we'll see. Hopefully like later on in the fall when things start slowing down, we can do this more regularly. And I've got a couple ideas what I want to do to try to make this a little bit different. So we'll have like some topics to discuss and stuff like that. I know normally it's just kind of a Q&A hangout, but I think we can make it like more useful, get more engagement. So we'll see. But I'm gonna have to scroll through. Let's see what kind of questions we got so far. So I think, let's see, would you get weird codes if you tap the wrong wires during your motive install? Absolutely. So, and I'm going to be making a couple different videos on the 440. Oh, I'm exposed. The hood is closed. Obviously, the 440 build has been slowing down like a lot, right? I've done everything to it pretty much that I want to. So, the only thing that I'm really concerned about right now is the clutch. But other than that, I'm probably not going to make a lot of videos on it. I will be doing like a motive troubleshooting guide so I can explain some of the common issues that people run into and stuff like that. Because I've run into a couple. I hear a lot from other people. I've made some changes to fix things on my car. And the motive is really reliable. It's just also easy to screw it up. So I'll talk more about that. But absolutely, if you tap something wrong, it can cause codes. I've seen people have issues like their cars won't start. So it can definitely cause a lot of issues. But if you know what to look for, if you know what can go wrong, it's pretty easy to diagnose a problem if you have it. So Yeah, I have a mode of reflex on the 440. So right now I've got low pressure fuel sensor, I have my port injection, and I have my low pressure fuel pump and my flex fuel sensor. So I'm using several of the outputs and inputs. I am not using the external boost controller for like external wastegates. I'm not using like nitrous or anything like that. Um, but all the other ones, pretty much, I'm using those outputs. So I know how to wire them up. I know how to make sure they're working. So I'll make a video talking about all that. Let's see, what is better, the Pure or the Flowmax for 650 to 700? I mean, it's really a toss up, guys, because all of the turbos have problems right now. Um, they all are kind of hit or miss on reliability. Most of the time they're reliable, but every once in a while you hear about somebody having a problem, and usually they don't talk about it publicly. So I feel like both companies make a good product. Both of them have good customer service. If you do have an issue, they'll help you fix it. Um, it's really kind of a toss up. Look at your budget, look at what's available, especially if something's going on sale or whatever, jump on that. But yeah, they both perform similarly. Yeah, I would not recommend a Vargas. I would go with Pure, Flowmax, or turbo systems. Not a lot of people in the United States run turbo systems, but that's been a pretty good proven turbo in Europe. So that was actually something I was thinking about doing on the 340, but for now I'm keeping it stock turbo. So we'll see. Am I keeping the 340 mostly stock? So I will say Patreon members, channel members, shout out to you guys for supporting. I give you guys some behind the scenes looks at things that are going on. So for those that don't know, you pay $5 a month, you get on the Patreon. I post videos and things just in the background so that you guys can see what I'm getting ready to do, get a heads up. It gives you a little better opportunity to give me input on what you want to see and all of that. The 340 was supposed to be a very simple, just daily driver car. And it started out that way. It's still stock turbo. I've got a flex fuel kit and a tune on it right now. But that's going to change. I've got a stack of parts that I'm planning on putting on the car, and I have more parts that are on the way. So we will obviously be doing stuff for the track. You guys will see part 2 of the track video on Wednesday, and you'll see how that went. But I've got some mods that I'm going to be doing to improve the handling, a little different from what most people do. So yeah, I think those will be good videos. And then I will be making more power. I will not be running an off-the-shelf map for much longer. So yeah, but it will still be stock turbo, at least for the rest of this year, because I do want to be able to do testing with the stock tune and stuff like that. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how many of these upgrades are coming out. All the cams are coming out, the new high pressure fuel pumps, injectors, all that kind of came out of nowhere. I did not see that coming. I pretty much told people to stop looking for injector upgrades, and then a month later, everybody dropped their little teasers and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's here. My only thing that I feel like is annoying is it starts rewriting the script, right? Because now everybody's like, oh, you need injectors to run 500 horsepower. Like, no, you don't. You need upgraded cams to make 600 horsepower. No, you don't. We're going to forget really quickly what we did without all these mods by the time they come out. And, it kind of is what it is. That's why they're selling out just from an announcement or a pre-order, because everybody wants to jump on this stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, I do have a lot of parts that will be going on the car. Some of them will just be temporary for videos, but most of it will stay on the car. Let's see. My power goal is 700. Would you recommend port direction or DI? Right now, I would recommend port. Port will get you there much easier and safer. With our current mods and things that are like readily available, 700 is right at the limit. So yeah, even with like a perfect ethanol mix, people are just barely tapping 700. Most people get like 690, 670. But yeah. Should I keep my staged 2+ high pressure fuel pump 340 or upgrade to the M340? It really just depends, man. I'm a big fan of the F30 simply because we can do whatever we want right now. You know, if you get an M340 and you're worried about over-the-air updates and all of that, it can get kind of annoying. So I'm really enjoying the F30. It does everything I want. The G20 has a lot more creature comforts, but I just don't want to deal with that right now. If I jump into a G20, it'll probably be after the OBD unlock is like finally released, or at least people locally are able to bench unlock it. Let's see, does my 340 or 440 have the M diff? Nope, both of them are open diff, stock open diff. The guy's trying to sell me a pure 850 for 2K. Just my personal opinion right now, I'm not a fan of the 850. A lot of people are having issues with it. The pure 800 is pretty solid, but I don't know what's different about the 850, if it's how the wheels are machined or whatever. But a lot of people are seeing like the nut on the wheel come off and then it just explodes and eats itself. So I think Pure has some work to do to resolve like a manufacturing issue or something. Let's see, what are my opinions on Steve Dinan and Carbon? I really don't pay attention to it. It's just slow and expensive, so I don't pay attention to Dinan or Carbon. Their bolt-ons are fine, but from like a tuning standpoint, I don't really think they're that competitive. They're mostly just in the space for people like in California and stuff that are worried about emissions and compliance, stuff like that. So it works for people that like that, but I'm not really interested in doing much with that. Can you run full E85 with a TU pump and port? Yep. I think I posted a video 3 or 4 weeks ago proving that you can run full E85 with a stock high pressure fuel pump. So you can run whatever you want. You'll just be limited on power. Let's see. I'm X-Drive. What power do I need to upgrade my drive shaft? So with drive shafts, we talk about this all the time, guys, but it's not really about a power limit like necessarily. It's mostly about how you drive your car. If you're launching it on a sticky tire on a prep surface, it's going to be a lot more risk than somebody making more power but just spinning their tires, in like third gear or something. So it's really about how you drive your car and what your entire setup is. That makes a bigger difference to it, just in my experience and what I've seen other people have to deal with. So if you plan on getting really heavy into drag racing and stuff, it's probably a good idea, especially if you're going to run a tire. I've seen people break their drive shaft on stock turbo. So it's not just about power necessarily. Let's see. Would you recommend a pure 800 if you want to stay on 93 pump gas? Yes. Yeah. So any turbo upgrade will make more power than the stock turbo using the same fuel. So if you're only on pump gas, a big turbo is going to make more power than a stock turbo. If you're on an ethanol mix, methanol, whatever, a big turbo will support more power than the stock turbo. Just because you're not making as much power as somebody else that's running a different fuel doesn't mean it's not worth it. You'll still experience gains. I just got one of my buddies to put a pure 800, or no, he put a Flomax on his Supra, and he just couldn't believe it because the shop that he took it to get it installed told him it wasn't going to be worth it. And they were trying to get him to buy race gas and everything from them. And he was like, no, it's fine. I just want to run 93. He didn't want to deal with all that. And he loves it. It makes way more power. I mean, imagine the gains that you got on your car going from pump gas to ethanol on the stock turbo. Like that was night and day. So it's the same thing. Even if you're making that same power without having to mix, you just upgrade the turbo instead. I think that's worth it. It's just more money, but not everybody wants to mix ethanol and deal with flex fuel and all that stuff. And I get it. Oh, you want to know about my background? Yeah. So I am an engineer by trade. I still work in engineering right now, but I'm not in the automotive space anymore. So I've worked at OEMs. I've worked at OEM suppliers in manufacturing, quality, lots of different areas. I got a lot of experience really quick. Realized I would much rather keep cars as a hobby than a job and got out of it. But yeah, I did work as an automotive engineer for, I guess, 5.5 years. So yeah, I mean, it was a good learning experience, and there's a lot to gain from actually working in the automotive space versus just reading about it in the news and stuff, because things are different. And especially being the engineer that a lot of people complain about or make assumptions about, how things actually work and how your priorities are set. So it just gives you a different lens. But yeah, that's kind of how I started some of my videos too, talking about that stuff. What's up, Terry? Speaking of working in automotive. What's up, man? Let's see. What's my opinion on a billet manifold or a top mount kit compared to long tube equal length primaries? Okay, that's a good question. So I am a fan of tubular manifolds. Obviously, I have the top mount turbo on my DOCRace kit. Even the OEM manifold is close to like a tubular design. Um, but the runners are just really short. And I think that's what most people try to do is they try to make the shortest runners with the tubular style flow. And it can be really hard, especially like on the cast manifolds. It's just really hard to get that kind of geometry inside of there. I think the difference in spool is probably somewhat negligible. The long tubes might spool a little bit slower, but the top end efficiency when you're pushing a lot of boost, it just runs better with a long tube manifold. So that's why I like it. I'm already running like a super stubby intake on it, because there's no space for my filter. So I like having at least the other components optimized for flow. But I mean, cast manifolds still work. Obviously, it still makes power. The same way there are like 10 different hybrids by the end of 2023, and they'll all be fast. I mean, it's the same thing with big turbos. So I haven't really seen anybody just like screw it up, which is a good thing. Let's see, what are my thoughts between MHD and BM3? Right now, I'm good on with MHD. I really like MHD, especially how they implement flex fuel. The way that they have the scale for an optimized mix, they're the only ones that do that. So I hear so many people having issues with running too much ethanol and stuff like that on the flex fuel tunes, which should not be the case. If it's a flex fuel tune, you should be able to run as much ethanol as you want. And I think MHD has the best implementation of that right now. But if you don't care about that and you're not using a reflex, so you don't care about like the code reading and stuff like that, they're both pretty similar. And boot mode's way easier to use. You can access it offline. You can change settings, and all you need to do is connect to your car and flash. MG Flasher, MHD, like all the other ones, you have to be connected to your car to change anything. And it's really frustrating. Let's see. I really like your Apex wheels on the 440. Oh, my feelings are hurt. Those aren't Apexes. I actually was getting ready to get some Apexes for the car, and I found the wheels that I have. But I have Rays. They're Volks E40s. So I know I'm kind of a wheel snob sometimes, but I've been wanting those wheels for a long time, and when I found them, I'll never let them go. Let's see, what do I think about Ecutech for the G20? That's solid. If you can get it, if you don't need like a Fem2 clone or whatever, they're kind of weird with the Fem2 stuff and unlocking those DMEs, but it is a good setup. BM3 you can change without connecting to the car. So let me explain that really quick. Like when you go into the app, you can go to your map and change like the burbles that you want. You can change your boost control. You can even look at the map details and just see what's offered. If they put an update out, you can go to the app, update it, and look at what options are there right away. With MHD, outside of like going to the main kind of screen and looking at the maps that are available, you can't look at anything. Anything that you click on, it says that you need to connect to your car. And it's just really annoying. Like on boot mode, I could get on my computer, make changes and save it, and then get on my phone and flash it when I get to the car. Like it would take me a lot less time. So I don't know. And with their new, like how it's disconnected from the cloud, I think that makes it more user friendly too. But for actual functionality, like for the tuning stuff, I think the flex fuel and the reflex thing is a big deal. So that's why I use both on the 440 and I use flex fuel on the 340. So that's important to me. That's why I like MHD. But you still have to flash the car to actually change any settings. It's just easier to be able to prepare it, go through your tune settings. And I do a lot of stuff that most people don't do, but yeah, it's just annoying when I'm clicking on something in MHD or looking at a setting, double checking what fuel pumps are available, or like they posted about the XDI maps being added. So I wanted to see if MHD had the checkbox for XDI yet. Oh, I can't check it without connecting to my car and pretending I'm flashing a map to go to the configuration screen and see what options are available. I don't know why it's like that. I understand you can't flash without it, but I don't know why you need to be connected to the car just to see the tune settings that are available and stuff. Let's see. Are the DTC 60s good for street driving? Not really. You can drive on it on the street, but it'll eat through your rotors and they're really loud and they dust really bad. And especially most street tires, it'll lock them up pretty easily. So luckily we have ABS. We don't have a big risk of like flat spotting our tires, but I think there are more street friendly brakes available. They won't be as aggressive, but if you're driving on the street, you shouldn't need something super aggressive. Isn't it unsafe to run an upgraded turbo without a custom map? Not necessarily. I mean, it's like saying, is it unsafe to run your turbo on a base map or an off-the-shelf tune? There are going to be a lot of room. There's going to be a lot of room to improve most maps. So for me, when I ran my off-the-shelf map on my big turbo setup, I read my logs. I made sure everything was safe. I wasn't running into any wastegate duty cycle issues, boost control issues. Fuel pressure was good. And I drove on it like that for several months. I was doing draggies and doing all sorts of testing because that's what I do. I'm weird. But I know plenty of people running it on off-the-shelf maps. The main thing I say is run logs. Make sure it works. There's no real guarantee for your setup that it'll work fine. If you're at a weird elevation or something, then it could be different. But for me on my car, it ran fine. So yeah, it just depends. Would I be able to get in the 10s with bolt-ons, meth, and a pure 800? You better be able to. Absolutely. There are stock turbo cars in the 10, so with an upgraded turbo and meth, you should definitely be able to get in there. I have a Dodge Stage 2, and if I upgrade to an Ultra Flow, what kind of power can I make? So the max I've seen usually is around 650 to 700 on an ethanol mix. That's the most that we can make right now without upgraded injectors or an upgraded lift kit, cam or anything like that. Let's see, worried about trans. There are a lot of stock trans cars in the 10s. Just don't go crazy with torque. Keep it around 600 foot-pounds. You should be okay. It's not that risky. Just get XHP, get all your settings dialed in, and it'll hold. Let's see, what would be something to be worried about when your gas consumption increases a lot? The first thing is your right foot. Make sure you're not just enjoying your tune, because a lot of people say that their gas mileage drops after their tune, and really they're just flooring it everywhere. But it could be a lot of things. Hopefully you don't have a fuel leak. You can double check on that. Make sure you don't have any boost leaks or anything, because that can cause consumption issues as well. Scan for codes, see if there are any shadow codes or anything that can tell you if something's wrong. But usually it's just your right foot. Let's see, what would you say is conservative power figure running a Flowmax with a TU pump on 98 Ron pump? Like 500 wheel. That's usually a pretty safe number. Low 20s is PSI. Should be good. Let's see, for your custom trans tune, do you ever have to take the car out for a drive? Do you have to take the car out of drive? No. So with your custom trans tune, you basically have 12 different settings because you have the drive mode. So you have Eco Pro, Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. And then you've got the transmission mode. So you've got D, M, and S. And even beyond that, you've got traction mode and DSC off. So you've got like 14 different modes. He can edit every single one of those. So he can make Eco Pro more efficient. He can make Sport Plus more aggressive. He can do different combinations with Sport Plus and Drive versus Sport Plus and manual, or Sport Plus and S. Like, he can adjust all of those. So for me, Drive is more usable for daily driving. Sorry, I keep feeling like I'm going to sneeze, but yeah, keeping the transmission in D is more usable. It keeps the RPMs in a better range, so it's not always shifting really quickly. Manual shifts are faster. I know some people had issues with like the stage 2 off the shelf map, and they couldn't believe I was running it because manual shifts were slow. Didn't really bother me until I got the custom tune and I realized like how snappy they could be. So yeah, I mean, he can set up every single mode and every combination of modes exactly how you want. So yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. It's been like 10 minutes and it won't go away. Let's see. Can I break down a solid DI only setup? Yeah, I actually was planning on making a video of that. Even though we don't have a whole lot of data right now, I think the data that Spool released is probably the most helpful because they're the only ones that really have a fuel pump that looks like it can flow more than the other off-the-shelf LT4 pumps. And they're going to have the lift kit, and they're going to have injectors. And watching them go through the stages of their build, I think tells most of the story. So I was going to make a video on that because I think it makes more sense now that we have some data. We still want more, but it helps. Yeah, we got somebody else joining the Sutphin Trans gang. Yeah, because he came out of nowhere for me. I had heard about him, but I didn't have an E90 or anything like that. And getting his trans tune was way better than I expected. And I'm not really an automatic guy anyway, but it makes the car much more usable. It was awesome to get the settings at the track. Something for me, I still use the kick down. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I only drive in manual mode. I only drive in Sport Plus or whatever. But I use the kick down a lot. I drive in drive mode a lot. And I didn't realize until late that the way I had him set it up, the kick down still worked in manual mode. So when I was at the track, if I wanted to floor it or get on the accelerator out of a turn, it would downshift like when I didn't want it to. So he was able to even adjust that like little detail. It'll still do the kick down and drive, but in manual, it's going to turn off the kick down. So now I don't have to worry about it. So it's so much better. It's so much better. It just makes it do exactly what you want when you want it to without having to press buttons and plan things out and think about it. It just knows what you want it to do. So yeah, highly recommended. Reach out to Rod. Can I run 100 octane gas with an E35 tune? If you're mixing it with ethanol to make E35, sure. But I would not just run race gas on an E30 tune. Absolutely not. Let's see, thought on the HP70 Trans. I think it's a good option, man. Especially for rear-wheel drive cars. It just bolts up, or at least it's closer to bolt on. For the X-Drive cars, you need like the custom parts, like the what is it? You need either like a drive shaft or a transmission spacer. You need a longer half shaft going, or you need a longer like drive shaft to the front or something. It's a little bit more wonky, but for rear-wheel drive cars, it's a pretty simple swap. Let's see. Does your parking brake work with the performance brakes? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. See, I'm way behind on comments. Sorry, guys. What trans is in the 340? It's just the stock HP50 right now. If you guys want to see the price of a custom trans tune, I have the link in the description of my video. I hate talking about pricing because pricing changes, so just check it out and you'll see all the latest. I have actually trans-tuned the 440. I made a video on that 3 years ago on April Fool's Day because it's a manual transmission. So go check that out if you guys want some nostalgia. Let's see, thoughts on the KLM 6466 top mount kit. So I'm not super familiar with KLM. I know about the turbo kit, but that's the one that's like really expensive, right? Or like a lot more expensive than the others. I'm not sure. Either way, I mean, it should perform well. 6466 is a good turbo, really popular option. It's really just kind of up to you. If the price and everything is in your budget and you like how it looks, go for it. I went and bought a $5,000, $6,000 turbo kit, and I'm making as much money making as much power as a $2,000 hybrid. So it's really just kind of up to you and what your priorities are. Let's see, would you recommend a transmission fluid flush? Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea, especially if you're going to be pushing the car. On the 340, I did it just recently, and that's why I made the video. I was at 62,000 miles. On my X5, I only did it at 100,000 miles, and that's because it was leaking. So I just replaced the pan and the gaskets and everything and did a transmission service at the same time. I don't hear a lot about transmissions failing for people that are just daily driving and dropping their cars off at the dealership for service. And the dealership isn't going to do it without you asking. So generally speaking, I think it's probably fine. But if you're going to be tuning your car and pushing it, racing it, and all that stuff, it's probably a good idea to swap fluid every once in a while. I haven't really seen good data either way that says like it's a requirement or not. Let's see, I have a 440 MHD Stage 2 Sutton tune. I do oil change every 5,000 miles. I'm decently hard on the car. Is there anything to look out for? I mean, generally speaking, no. Keep up with your coil packs or your spark plug changes. Run logs every once in a while. Make sure that everything's okay. I do the injector check every once in a while now that I know how to do it easily. So, when you pull in after a drive, turn on your logger, check your rail pressure, your high pressure fuel pump actual if you have boot mode, and just make sure that that's holding steady or increasing so your injectors aren't stuck open. And a PCV delete doesn't hurt either. Even though I didn't do a PCV delete on the 440 because it wasn't causing a problem. And then when they came out, it was kind of like, why not? But I was making, 500 to 600 horsepower for almost 2 years before I did the PCV delete on that car. So it just depends. What is the checkbox for upgraded injectors doing on the off-the-shelf maps exactly? So it's the same thing as running like a Dodge Stage 2. There are specific quantity like data inputs in your tune so that it can calibrate properly. And I know, like, for example, on your high pressure fuel pump, the main one is that connector that you plug into. That's your quantity control valve. That needs to be properly like calibrated in the DME tune to control your high pressure fuel pump. So it'll be the same thing for the injectors. If they flow more, they need to know, the tune needs to know that it's flowing more so that it can calculate how much fuel to flow. Because our cars don't have like a return. It doesn't have a fuel pressure regulator managing that fuel flow. So it's predicting how much it needs to flow and how much the injectors need to open every time the engine turns over. And the only way it can do that calculation is to know what all that data looks like. So that's what the checkbox is going to do. Because I had like a Dodge Stage 2 on my car. I flashed the stock tune and I could still check the Dodge Stage 2 box in MHD or boot mode and it would work. That's all it's doing is just setting what those values need to be so that the hardware works. Let's see. I saw somebody running straight water through the charge pipe. Do you think it's safe? I do think it's safe. You want to run the smallest nozzle possible to make sure that all the water can evaporate, because when it evaporates, it's taking out the heat from the intake air and basically cooling it off. The only downside is we don't have space to do that after the intercooler. That's where the real sauce is. For people that have front mount intercoolers, they'll spray water after, and they can even get their temperature for their IATs like below ambient because it'll continue cooling it off. But it still helps. It helps your intercooler work more efficiently. You just want a really small nozzle, and you probably want to spray after the temperature and pressure sensors on your manifold. So not a lot of space for it to evaporate. Let's see, I have a B58, B30, M0. Can I put the PCV thing on your car on mine? I mean, all Gen 1 B58s can work. If you have a TU, it will not work. So that's the only downside. They changed the valve cover on the Gen 2 B58, so that PCV cap isn't serviceable. Let's see, thoughts on the ETS intercooler. Yeah, I have no idea. If it's still a prototype and they're not posting data, I can't really say anything about it. That one's been in prototype for a long time too. I thought it was out already. I feel like they showed that at like SEMA 2 years ago or something. Oh yeah, get some runs in. Let me know how it goes. We still need to talk about diffs too, so let me know. Hopefully you hook up. It's funny watching from the staging lanes. Oh, I got some more questions. Hold on. I'm really not good at this on Instagram. Let's try this. Are you aware of any single mass flywheels for manual transmission B58s? Most of them come with clutch kits. I haven't seen any like standalone ones, but probably if you reach out to Motive, Spec, Clutch Masters, they might be able to sell it to you on its own. That's a good question too, because that's something that I've been thinking about. If I can keep my 550 clutch with a single mass flywheel, will that help it stretch at all? Probably not, but I've thought about it. The only downside is it's noisy. It's really harsh if you're not running it with a sprung clutch, which the OEM organic clutches are not. So usually you want an aftermarket clutch with a sprung disc to help reduce the shock and stuff like that. Let's see. So now that you're a famous YouTuber, can we still awkwardly shove 7 dudes in a hotel room in Helen last minute? So that wasn't me. I mean, I remember when you did that, I was the guy yelling World Star from the back with my cell phone and the flashlight on. But you guys weren't in there that long, so I didn't really think it was that big a deal. I think you got it done. Let's see here. Speaking of drive shaft upgrades, is there anyone who makes a one piece for G20? I don't know specifically. I mean, you could reach out to the usual suspects, drive shaft shop, all those guys. If they aren't making one already, they could probably make you one custom. That's what most people were doing. But there are a couple people that sell like off the shelf versions now. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. Cool. That makes it easy. What else do we got? Do you think the newest DME software for the Gen 1 guys? I'm guessing you mean Gen 2. Do I think it'll be cracked? Yes. If somebody is able to do it, then it is possible for it to be cracked. The only downside is only one person can do it right now. And there's a lot of speculation on how that one person is able to do it. So, yeah, I mean, I think eventually it will be. And I just saw something. Who was it? I think it was HP Tuners that posted like a month or so ago that now they're able to unlock C8 Corvette DMEs and flash those. And apparently that DME is very similar to the Bosch. Sorry, Eric. Apparently those are very similar to the ones that are used in the Gen 2 B58s, like the updated DMEs. So that's a good sign. And I don't know that they'll be tuning our cars anytime soon, but if that's a method that somebody else can get their hands on in our space, that would be great. Is the custom trans tune used similar to the custom tune offered by XHP? Yeah, I just went with an individual tuner instead of XHP, but it's the same service, same type of service. Do you know anything more about that MHD DME unlock device? My DME was updated, but I don't know if I should wait. I don't like waiting on companies. I like MHD, but I don't know when it's actually going to come out. I think they said they had an estimated timeline end of July, but if you need to get going, just send it out. Let's see, more info on nitrous on our platform. I mean, there's really nothing special to it, right? It's getting easier to implement now because we have a reflex and because we have intake manifolds with built-in ports. But I mean, it works just like any other platform. Get extra fuel, spray it in, send it, get it tuned. Pretty simple from a power adder standpoint. Let's see, does anything attach to the gold attachment that screws into the bottom of the catch can? So that's just the drain. Like, it should have the little valve that opens and closes. So when you tighten it down, it's closed. You can actually unscrew it and see how it works, but there's just a little hole in it. And when you unscrew it enough, that hole will line up and create a gap where the oil or water or whatever can flow out. So that's all that is. It's not like a fitting or something that you need to screw something else into. You can add a drain onto it, if you want to add a hose or something, but there's nothing else that has to attach to it. Yeah, man, just send it out. It's not worth waiting. I mean, if you really want to get a flash, one thing I have learned is you don't wait on companies. Unfortunately, that's not something that we can rely on. If I upgrade to a TU pump, do I need a tune? No. It works just like the stock pump. Does the head need to come off for a cam install? No. And do you think the cam ledges are too weak for upgraded springs? No. I think everything is pretty much set up to work out of the box with the parts that are being offered. But, time will tell. Have you ever heard of the rear diff spitting oil from the breather? Yeah, a lot of people have that issue. The solution, as weird as it sounds, is you can run a catch can. So you can basically use that vent hole and run a small hose to a catch can with a filter on top, and that'll catch the fluid. Let's see, thought on an S58 intercooler retrofit for the B58. Nah, bro, that's not going to work. Two completely different systems. Have I sold the 30? Yes, I finally sold my Garrett kit. So for those of you guys that remember, I had a Volkswagen Jetta GLI. That was the car that I sold and got rid of before I bought the 340. And I have almost sold everything from that car. I literally parted it out to the bare bones and just sold the shell to a junkyard. Right now I have a carbon fiber trunk, a carbon fiber wing, I think an oil pressure gauge. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all that's left. I sold the hood. I sold my turbo. and I have motor mount still. But I sold my turbo. I sold the engine, the transmission, everything else. So feeling pretty good about that. Let's see. Oh, you're talking about the Gen 2 unlock. Okay, so yeah, the problem with the OBD unlock is it's its own exploit, right? So when you get a bench unlock and you're able to connect it to a program, it can basically read what's in there and flash it manually. For the OBD unlock, the reason why you hear all the dings and chimes and everything going off It's because they kind of exploit to get into that section of the DME. So that's even harder. So the first thing we need is somebody local to be able to bench unlock those DMEs. Then above and beyond that, we will be able to OBD unlock them. So, I mean, I still think it's possible, but it's going to probably be a while. And I'm pessimistic now. I was really thinking it would be done like sometime this year, but at this point, I don't know. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but I do think eventually it will, because it's going to be the same DME across multiple platforms, and there's going to be so many people interested in making it work. I think it just has to be cracked at some point. Let's see. Do you want to read my data log? Sure, man. So if you guys ever need me to help, if you guys ever need me to help with data logs or anything like that, just let me know. You can send me an email, DM. I get to it when I can. So don't message me and expect service like while you're waiting on the side of the road needing to be towed. But I can definitely review and provide feedback. Yeah, somebody get Jamie some cold water, man. He's losing it over there. Let's see. I've checked everywhere for coolant leaks on my 440, but I don't see anything. I watched your videos, but still don't see anything. The coolant loss is an unnoticeable amount of pressure. So I'm not sure if I understand that completely, but my coolant loss was from my cap. It was basically not getting a good seal, and it was evaporating past the threads. And when I got a new cap, it fixed it for me. So the best bet is to pressure test the system. If the pressure test passes, replace the cap. That's usually my recommendation. Unless you have like a really crazy setup where you could be like lifting the head or something and having like a head gasket issue, then that could also be a problem. So you recommend any tuners that work with port meth setups? So I use OdinTuned for all my tuning. He does a lot of setups with meth. Usually he recommends pairing it with a mode of reflex so it's easy to tune, but pretty much all the controllers, Snow Performance or whatever, they all work. It's not that hard to dial in. Let's see. I have a 440i X-Drive manual, bolt-ons and upgrades. I have first gear turbo lag. Will a TU pump help with that? No. I think the only thing that you can do to help with turbo lag if you're in a manual is slip the clutch a little bit more. If I want to get going pretty quickly, it's not that hard. Slip the clutch until it catches and you're already moving pretty good. Just, raise the RPMs a little bit, basically keep the revs up. So my manual is much more responsive than the auto for sure. The throttle in the manual is way more sensitive and the turbo feels like it spools faster to me. But if you're slipping the clutch and taking off at 1,000 RPM and you floor it, like there's never going to be any boost down there, even with an upgraded intake or any of that stuff. So yeah, I remember MHD or whoever put out an update. The S55 guys were able to flash OBD now without an unlock. Well, so because don't forget the S55 guys have the same DME issues as us, right? They were having it before us. They were having it in 2019. And they got new DME encryption and like all of the M2 comps and basically all the late model F80s and like the last 2 years of the F82. They couldn't get an OBD unlocked. They had to get a bench unlock. So BMW did it to those cars first, and then they did it to the B58 cars around, I guess, March of 2020. So yeah, those guys are waiting for DME updates just like we are because they don't want to send their DMEs out either. Let's see, what's the minimum ethanol percent needed for a full E85 map? Is 80% good enough? The only way to know is run a log, or get just a flex fuel kit so you don't have to even think about it. But I mean, it's probably fine. 80% is probably fine. but I can't tell you like it needs to be above E73 or something. I don't know that. "2019 M2 comps didn't need a bench unlock." In 2019, the S55 DMEs were logged. That was before the B58 DMEs. So if you have an early 2019 M2, you might not need it. But in 2019, the build date, that's when they started getting locked. So that's why they keep posting about it from MHD and boot mode, trying to get more capability for them. So you change the cab and pressure tested also. I mean, are you sure you have a leak? I don't really think I understood what your first post said. You're losing an unnoticeable amount of coolant. It just sounds like you're not losing coolant. But maybe I don't understand what you're saying. Let's see, for B58 TU owners, how much reliability, longevity benefit would you expect adding an intercooler intake manifold? So I mean, our systems have extremely good cooling systems. And obviously, you know, I was posting my car showing that I was beating on it for 20, 25-minute sessions with completely stock cooling system with no issues. So the cooling system works really well. The car handles heat really well. The main thing with an intercooler upgrade is the strength for higher boost scenarios. Because even if you do have an upgraded turbo, you know, your IATs might go up a little bit, but the car can handle it. So I don't really see that as a reliability issue unless you're pushing a lot of power. Yeah, my BM3 Flex Fuel Kit is reading 80%, but I'm getting a lot of timing corrections. My tuner suggests to change to a Flex Fuel tune. Honestly, timing corrections on an E85 map is a little bit weird, but maybe it just depends. Because on my car, I had the Flex Fuel tune on. I think I was running E65 or E63, and I was getting like 18.5 degrees of timing. So I don't know how much timing your tune is requesting for you to get timing corrections with E80, because even that much is kind of a waste. You don't gain a lot of power with that much extra timing. So I don't know. It might depend on the tune. If your tuner is making you an E85 map and they're saying that you can't run E80, it's probably too aggressive. That's just my uneducated opinion from this side of the desk. Let's see, is a low pressure fuel pump needed with upgraded injectors? This stuff is going to be really hard to tell, guys, because a lot of people don't know. I mean, we've seen some data, and I think the low pressure fuel pump limit is unaffected because your low pressure fuel pump is the first step in the system, right? It gets it to your port injectors, your high pressure fuel pump, your direct injectors. It has to be able to supply all of that. So no matter what you're running, it's pretty much going to have the same limit of flow. It might be more efficient with the direct injection system, but I don't think it'll be that much more efficient. So it just really depends on how much fuel or how much ethanol you're running and how much power you're making. But definitely, if you plan on pushing over 700, you're going to need a low pressure fuel pump. I can almost guarantee it. Let's see. Thoughts on the first B58 DCT swap? I don't think it's going to be worth it. Personally, I'm not a fan of dual clutches though. I don't know. We'll see. They were advertising it as like a cool feature to have like the 2-step launch and all of that stuff, but I don't think that's going to be a benefit personally. I think the ZF is the best automatic transmission out right now. And again, that's just my uneducated opinion. But yeah, I mean, DCTs are jerkier. They're just not as good for daily driving. And tracking my ZF, it worked great. It had no hiccups. even though everybody was convinced that my fuel level was low or my fluid level in the transmission was low after my transmission service. I mean, I didn't have any overheating issues. I didn't have any issues, and I beat on that car for 2 days. So I think the ZF transmissions are strong. They're reliable. They drive well, and a DCT transmission swap is also not going to be cheap. So I'm struggling with thinking that there's a benefit there, especially versus like just getting a pure stage 2 or something like that. But we'll see. You know, somebody's going to prove me wrong, I'm sure. Let's see. The good thing about BM3 is if you buy their software, they unlock it for free as long as you pay for shipping. Really? But where do you send it to? Because that's still not as convenient as if you have a local shop that can do a bench unlock for you. And I don't know where they're located. I'm trying to think if I can't remember if they were in Canada or something like that. I feel like I've seen their shipping location, but it might not be convenient for everybody to ship it out, especially if it's going to another country. Oh, okay. So you're getting a custom tune. If you're getting a custom tune and they can't dial it in and you're getting timing corrections, that's a problem. If you have E50 and it works and you go up to full E85 and it doesn't work, to me, that's 100% a tune problem. I mean, I'm probably just speaking from no experience or whatever. Most tuners can figure this stuff out a lot better than I can, even just by looking at logs. But that doesn't make sense to me. So, and a lot of times I think tuners experience certain like performance standards or whatever. They expect your car to be able to take a certain amount of boost, a certain amount of timing, you know, all of these things based on your setup. And when it doesn't work, they just say they can't tune your car. And I think there's a lot of variation in how our cars perform, even above and beyond that. You should at least be able to make it work. And even if he tells you, hey, normally you can make more boost or make more timing, you might want to check on this, he should be able to tune your car and get you clean performance. Now, if it's messing up everywhere, if your E50 map is acting wonky and your logs just look ridiculous on all the setups, then it's probably a hardware issue. But yeah, I struggle with you saying you're getting a custom tune and they can't get clean timing. I don't know. Let's see. What do you make of guys like Dynan saying that popular tuning platforms do things like fade knock sensors and risk detonation? So some of it is probably true, but also the aspect of it that's true is not dangerous. And that's why I talk to people about focusing on timing corrections and not just your knock counter, because your knock counter can be tripped by almost anything. And some like more experienced tuners will actually say they'll disable the knock counter, put a mic on your engine, and listen for knock, because that's the only way to reliably tell when you're pushing it too far, like when it starts pinging. You know, the knock sensors on my car I was concerned with because on E90s, when they do the 550i clutch swap above a certain amount of torque, I think it's like 500 foot-pounds, it starts breaking out and breaking up and showing timing corrections and knock detection because of reverberations in the flywheel. So I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to push my car that far because I still have the dual mass flywheel. And I was under the assumption that at a certain point, it would cause that issue. Now, our knock sensors have been relocated compared to like N54 cars. So I'm finding out we don't have that issue and my car runs fine, even putting down, 600 horsepower or whatever. But that's just something that you can't 100% rely on. It is as intelligent as the tuner and as the software, but a lot of people will soften it because they know that it's detecting false knock, basically. So, but The ideal there is they should be developing that tune on a car where they can audibly listen for knock and confirm whether knock exists or not. So that way they're making a safe tune that won't push it, in a dangerous area. Let's see. So another question about turbo systems. I talked about this earlier, but I think turbo systems is a good setup from what I've seen. It seems like a really quality turbo setup, and I think they're either getting ready to come out with or already came out with a new stage 3 version. So it seems pretty reliable. Just a lot of people don't run it. I don't know. It's very popular in Europe and certain areas of outside of the United States, but here we don't really see it a whole lot. And I don't think there are a lot of like even distributors or anything in the United States, so it doesn't get pushed by the main companies that are selling a lot of turbos. But it seems like a quality kit. There's no reason why anybody anywhere couldn't run it. They just don't really have a name like some of the other companies, so it doesn't get as much attention. And do I recommend a Door Stage 2 or FX200? Right now, both work. An FX200 isn't going to give you any more headroom, even if it flows more than a Door Stage 2 without upgraded injectors. So, yeah, that's my thoughts. Oh, I have to top from min to max every 30 days. Okay. Yeah, so you definitely have either consumption or a leak. And which tank is it? Is it the big tank or the small tank? Hopefully not both. Let's see. I'm trying to run E30 to E40 without an analyzer, just using math. What should I be looking for in the feel of the car and logs to know if I'm hitting it or not? Oh, yeah. So that's pretty easy, especially on an off-the-shelf map. You basically want to target the mix that works for you anyway. And so what I do is I play a balancing act between fuel pressure and timing. So if timing is low but fuel pressure is good, I'll raise the ethanol content. If fuel pressure is low and timing is good, then I'll lower the ethanol content. And I just kind of go back and forth until I find a happy medium where fuel pressure stays steady. That's really the priority. And you have the best timing possible. So I've talked about this a couple times before, but when I did run like an off-the-shelf E30 tune, I was running like E37 on that tune. And it's just because my pump gas quality isn't that good. I used to get timing corrections on the 93 octane tune, so I knew my pump gas quality wasn't that good. So I started with E30, then I went up to E32, then E34, and I landed on E37, and I was able to run that with just a TU pump and keep good rail pressure and clean up my timing. And I got no more than like maybe 3 degrees on one cylinder every once in a while of timing correction. But you got to run logs to be able to tell. Let's see, I replaced my CV axle on my 340 and now it's making a screeching noise. Could it need an alignment? If you disconnected your control arms, it definitely could, especially if you didn't reconnect them under load. You're supposed to like jack up the car and put everything under tension before you torque down the bolts going through like all your bushings and stuff. And hopefully you replaced all the seals and everything at the same time. So it just depends. Go over your work, make sure everything's tight. Make sure you didn't loosen anything. All your bolts should be tight. Otherwise it can cause rattles and stuff too. If my car blows up, will you fix it? No, I will not fix it. I probably will make a video about you though. So there's that. Hopefully that helps. Fuel It or Dodge Stage 2. They're pretty much the same pump. I'm a fan of the Dodge pump. I have the Dodge pump on my car. All right, sorry, I keep falling behind, guys. Lots of questions coming in. Thoughts on the B58 TU after 50,000 miles? You're just getting started, man. It's nothing. 50,000 miles. Oh, all right. So I have an EFR 9280 big boost kit on the way. Did I make the right decision versus the 6870 big boost kit? So, personal opinion, both of those turbos are too big for a street car. If you're just looking for peak performance, a 6870 will probably make more power than a 9280. But I feel like if you're getting an EFR turbo, get an 8474. If you want a little bit more than that, you can get a 9274. But I think the best EFR turbo is an 8474 for our cars, and it can support like 900 wheel horsepower. If you're getting a precision, I'm a fan of the 6466. The 6870 is just big, man, and it performs well. All the fastest cars run it, but for a street car, I think smaller is a little bit better for drivability. Let's see. Do you recommend an intake manifold for a 23 Supra running around 640? It couldn't hurt, you know. It really just depends. It's kind of like, I don't want to say that it's a ticking time bomb, like it's a matter of time, but it really just is kind of dependent on your scenario. You know, some people are making 650, close to 700 on the stock intake manifold. I've seen some people crack the manifold on a stock turbo. So, I mean, it definitely couldn't hurt if you have the budget for it. It's worth it, especially if you plan on adding port injection. I'm assuming you have port injection to make that much power anyway. So it just kind of simplifies things. It puts the injectors in the right spot. You know, the injector spraying down into the valves is more efficient than spraying up through a spacer plate. And you can also make some of your money back by selling the spacer plate, which makes it a little easier on the wallet too. But yeah, I think the most popular one right now is either EOS, or a lot of people go with RK AutoWorks. I have RK AutoWorks on my car, and CSF is another popular one too. So yeah. No, you're good, man. I know a lot of people like going for the biggest turbo possible. And I mean, to this day, the fastest stock engine F30, like 340, or the fastest stock engine B58, it's running a 9280, or it was running a 9280. So it makes jam. It's just not great for performance. I remember when the one stock guys were trying to dial it in, they used to complain about trying to build up boost on launch and things like that. Once they figured it out, it was good. But it's a very top end happy turbo. It doesn't give a whole lot down low. But if you like that, you like that. You know, if you just want to make boost and fly off into the atmosphere, that's definitely one of the kits that can get you there. It also helps to raise the red line too, because when it comes on, you hit red line really quickly. So most people try to rev out to like 74 or 7,500 just to get a little more power band. Let's see. Gosh, we're really cooking. It's been over an hour. Nitrous on launch. It can help. It can help. It's still just a lazy turbo on our cars. So you need revs, you need airflow. And if you get like a torque converter, raise the revs up on launch, that can help too, because our cars don't like to rev really high at a standstill anyway. Let's see. How bad are pops and bangs for a car? They're not that bad. They're okay. Just I don't really recommend like the crazy ones, because you know, people that try to get the flame tunes and stuff, that's not great for it. But off the shelf burbles, they're typically fine. You had a video a while ago about your goals with YouTube and your daily view count. How are the view counts these days? That's a good question. So the views are doing pretty good. I think it's really funny because I shared that video for how much I made from my first video, that video covering my first video that hit 100,000 views and how much money I made. And I think people just had no idea how much YouTube paid, because it made 100,000 views and I made $300. So, I mean, people assume that I'm making thousands and thousands of dollars off of YouTube and I'm getting ready to buy like a Bugatti or something, but it's really not that. It's kind of a labor of love. I'm just enjoying it right now. Hopefully one day it can pay better. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see most of my videos get a couple thousand views. The real jam for me is that they continue getting views, right? Because I make DIYs, I answer technical questions, I try to post data and things to help you guys plan out your builds. So after I post it, if it gets a couple thousand views the first week, cool, but it'll still continue getting views over time for people that are interested in building their cars. So yeah, I mean, my views are continuing to go up month over month, and I'm happy with that. And I don't have to be like a super creative, super exciting personality, which works with me. I'm just not that guy to be going crazy with animations and visuals and all this stuff and trying to come up with new things every week. I'd rather just talk about like the down and dirty, like real data. That's my bread and butter. So, but yeah, I mean, it's working out, man. It's definitely better than it was last year, and that's where I want to be. Every year it's getting better. And it's really funny because every November and December, I think we talked about this, they post the ads for Christmas. So like basically between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and you get like a huge bump in revenue because they charge companies more for the ads. So you automatically make more for the ads that people see. So then you're like, oh man, I'm doing great. Like I must be doing something right. And then January hits and it drops right back down. So that's always a kind of a funny situation. But at least I know why it happens and when it happens. The first year I thought I screwed up. I thought all you guys left. Let's see, for track excursions, what do you think will be your next mod? Are you thinking coilovers? So, like I said, the track mods that I'm doing for my car are probably going to be different than what most people do. I am not planning on lowering the car. I have three main things that I want to do before my next track day to improve the performance and handling. I don't think that there's anything wrong with lowering your car, but I don't think I need it. I don't think that's going to give me the performance improvement that I need, because it's not just about lowering your car and making it stiffer. It's about fixing the geometry and making the car stable, right? Suspension has to have compliance. Like the whole point of it is to oscillate and keep your tire in contact with the ground. And it did a good job of that. Even in the soft setting, like I have the adaptive suspension, and in the soft setting, it was fine. The main thing, maybe like a hint at what's coming, is fixing body roll. And I need to be able to get on the throttle earlier, because all the times that you guys saw me lose traction, I am 100% confident it was just my inside wheel spinning. So fixing that so that I can get on the throttle quicker coming out of a turn, getting down the straight and getting more speed coming out of a turn, that'll get me squared away. You're on the right track. But yeah, so we'll see what comes together. I'm talking to companies, of course, trying to see what we can do to get the right parts on the car. But I've got a couple months, so I've got time. And like I said, I've already got a stack of boxes of other parts that are waiting to go on the car. But yeah, lowering, I obviously like a low car. If you guys have seen the 440, I have KW V1s on there. They've been phenomenal. I'm a big fan of KW. They make a lot of different versions too, depending on how low you want to go, how stiff you want it to be, things like that. So that's usually what I recommend. Let's see, what's the fastest hybrid turbo you have seen? I think the current fastest hybrid is a Flowmax, at least for Gen 1. I'll have to double check, because I usually don't focus on the micro records too much. But in Europe, for sure, like there's an M140 with a pure 800 or a pure 850. That was pretty fast. But in the United States, I think the fastest car is on a Flomax. It might be Trevor. It might be because he ran a 9.8. I'm trying to think of who ran faster than that on a hybrid. I'm not sure, but I think it's probably a Flomax, the Ultra Flow. So, and everybody's about to come out with new ones. So, like literally every company's about to come out with new turbo options. So just keep your eyes out for that too. Let's see. Will you ever get a G20? I would like to. Like I said earlier, I think one thing I'm concerned about is jumping into a G20 and not being able to tune it. So that kind of bugs me. I also want a Supra, but it's not nearly as daily drivable or usable as a 4-door car. I got really comfortable with the F30 really quick, and I've had the kids in the car. We've done a lot in that car already outside of like the build and stuff that I post on the video. Like it literally is my daily driver now. So yeah, G20 would probably be the most likely option between those two, but I really want a Supra. I do want one. Let's see, what's my favorite sandwich? Chipotle. Bam. See, somebody knows me. Pretty much if you ask me anything like that, the answer is usually Chipotle. That's a great way to put it. And I've been that way since high school, so don't judge me. Is it okay to put liquid moly fuel injector? I'm assuming you mean cleaner with E30 in it. Yes, generally. The cleaner is just like an additive, and it's the same kind of additives that they put in pump gas. So if you get gas from, like, for example, Shell or something, they're already putting additives in the fuel to make it burn cleaner, to give it cleaning properties. That's why usually I don't say like fuel injector cleaner is necessarily needed. I just flush my car with pump gas twice a year. So, but it depends. I mean, I know some people that swear by it. I thankfully have not had any fuel injector issues. It is what it is, but you can definitely use it with any fuel. It's just an additive. Let's see. What do you recommend for cars without the adaptive suspension? So that's a fair point, and I didn't think about that. Somebody else asked me how the suspension felt because they had an X-Drive car, and I know you guys, I think even in M Sport, like it's lifted and really soft and floaty. So it's really up to you to tell. I think if you did want to upgrade your suspension, the softest, least aggressive springs would be the best place to start because you just want it to be settled. That's it. You don't want it to be stiff. You just want the car to be composed. There should be no secondary motions. When you go over a bump, it should come up and down and lock in. And that was the nice thing about the car with me. I had my buddy behind me at one point, and he said when I went around a turn, he could see up into my wheel wells because the car was like at a 45-degree angle. But it was settled, like I could get into the turn. I just had to be patient. And once it settled down, then I could power through the turn and it was fine. So, if it's like wobbly and, not settling down, that's when I would consider upgrading the suspension. Right now, I'm not there. So I'm not planning on doing any lowering or stiffering of the suspension right now. And then, of course, the other thing is if you have like an aggressive front lip or something and you floor it and like the lip is rubbing or your tires are rubbing because they're too wide or something like that, and you want to limit the articulation of your suspension that way, then yeah, stiffer suspension. But usually, I mean, I still recommend taking your car to the track as stock as possible first. Bring some brake pads and tires and just feel it out, because nobody can tell you what your car needs better than you once you feel what it needs, like you'll feel the that's messed up. You'll be able to feel whatever's wrong with it. So let's see. What website do you recommend to buy parts? For example, I need a TU pump. Is 320 USD a good price? So I mean, obviously I'm a BimmerNetwork affiliate, so I put the link in all of my videos. If you guys want to check with them first, I usually recommend that. And I have a discount code that'll give you a couple bucks off. The TU pumps are extremely competitive, and the best thing to do if you want to get the cheapest TU pump is to just search for the part number. Because I bought my first one from eBay, I bought it from Germany. Everybody here was selling them for $1,000, and I bought it for I think 600 or 650. And then now they're all $500 or less. So it really just depends. Different people have different sales. Different people have different supplies, so they price them differently. So just Google the part number, and a lot of different options will come up. But if you guys are looking for any bolt-ons or anything like that, check out BimmerNetwork because it's owned by a B58 owner. He stocks a lot of parts himself. He'll ship them out himself. He's not just a drop shipper. And he can answer a lot of technical questions too. So I always recommend that. What do I think of Ohlins for F30 versus KWs? I think Ohlins are good. There's a lot of hype there, right? And a lot of people put upgrades on their car and swear by it without trying anything else. And it's not that I don't think it's worth it, but I don't think that most people can truly find the limits of capability for a lot of these setups where it makes sense to spend twice as much money on something that can give you 10% gain. KWs make really high quality kits. Like if you get KW V3s, it has adjustable dampening, adjustable rebound. You can get their club sport suspension with external reservoirs. I mean, it can get really nice and really expensive too. So just from like a company to company standpoint, I don't really think there's a fair comparison there, you know, but I know Ohlins has a lot of credibility from like a track perspective. But I just like KWs. I think they're composed. They're not too stiff. They're not too soft. They have a lot of options, and they go really low. So if you just want them for looks, they work. If you want it for performance, it works. It's just a great all-around kit. Let's see. Would you sell the 440 for the Supra? No, I would sell the 340 for a Supra. But the 440 isn't going anywhere. I do not ever plan on selling the 440, to be completely honest. Let's see. Do you think the B58 TU is better than the S55? I think all the B58s are better than the S55, and that's just my personal opinion. I'm not a fan of the S55. I heard a lot about them before I really got into BMWs, and I remember I was at work walking like in the parking lot, and I hear like two Hondas racing down the street, like two B18s, and I'm like, that is the most ridiculous, annoying sound I've ever heard in my life. Like the only thing worse than one Honda is two. And you just hear it's like two bees in jars like flying down the road. And then I start hearing it get closer and it gets closer. And then I see it turn into my parking lot and it's my coworker's M4. And I was just like, never in my life will I put myself through that on purpose. And he had the M Performance exhaust. Like it was his attempt at making it sound better. I know people talk about the equal length mid pipes and people have the single mid pipes and all that stuff. In person, they all sound the same to me. Personal opinion. I couldn't do it. But B58s are cheaper, easier to work on. They make plenty of power. Lots of mods available. Shout out to the A90s for blowing up the aftermarket for us. And yeah, I mean, I'm just a big fan of the B58. So, and even the S58, like I started looking up videos for, I think it's like changing a charge pipe, something that should be pretty simple, or I thought would be pretty simple. And it was just insane how hard it is to work on those cars, changing turbos on those cars, downpipes on those cars. I understand they're capable, but there's more to it than that for me. You know, if all you're doing is buying your car and dropping it off at a shop and driving it, maybe it's different for you. But I enjoy other aspects of my car, and that just doesn't fall into my ballpark of entertainment, I guess. Let's see. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a single horse-sized duck? See, this guy's asking the real question. I'm probably going to make a video on that in the future, just because it's a really common question for the B58. What kind of miles per gallon do you get running E all the time? So it's not that bad. I haven't actually manually calculated it in a while, so it's probably not accurate. But when I check the gauge in my car, it's usually around 21 miles per gallon. When all I was doing was running logs, it was really bad. I remember earlier this year, I think I installed the intake manifold, ran a bunch of logs, installed the low pressure fuel pump, ran a bunch of logs. And then somebody else asked me, and I was talking about it, but I just checked it to make sure, and it said like 14. So when you're using it, it gets pretty bad. But my typical driving is some city, some highway pulls, enjoying the car, but also doing some cruising and stuff. So with mixed driving, it's around 20, I would say. 20 average. Not too bad. Let's see, I just got this code, heating lambda probe, bank 1, control line brake. Which O2 sensor should I check? So it shouldn't just say bank 1, it should say bank 1 sensor 1 or bank 1 sensor 2. Sensor 1 is the sensor that's closest to the turbo. Sensor 2 is the one that's farthest from the turbo. But you can probably also check it. I mean, just make sure they're plugged in, make sure the wire isn't cut or damaged. None of them are like, wire isn't sitting on your turbo or something and burnt up. But I think I'm kind of guessing here, but if I remember correctly, when that code starts with 12A, it's sensor 1, and when it starts with 12B, it's sensor 2. But don't quote me on that. Double check the actual code to see which one it says. Let's see, I've done a few track days with the non-M Sport suspension, 4,000 miles, so basically new, and the shocks are too stiff. See, I agree. The car does not need to be any stiffer. Not in my opinion. If you have like the floaty suspension, like some of those X-Drive cars, then maybe it needs to be buttoned down a little bit, but my car did not. Yeah, and keep in mind, I've had a lot of different setups. So on the 440, I had the base M Sport suspension. The 340 has the adaptive M Sport suspension. And then I have the KW coilovers on the car now. Before that, I had H&R Super Sport springs. So I've had base, adaptive, just springs, and coilovers. And while I like the look of coilovers the most, I think from a performance standpoint, the stock suspension probably performs the best just from like mechanical grip. So, it really just depends. Eventually, there are certain points where you need to make it stiffer for the car to be composed, but most of us aren't there yet. All right, what else? Let's see. Do you prefer F30 or F32? I prefer the F32. The problem for me with the F30 is everything's just bigger. The F32 sits lower, it's wider, it's just more the shape of what I like. And I prefer coupes anyway. The only thing I prefer about the F30 is like the front bumper, like the shape of the M Sport bumper, I think is better. The F32, like the bumper kind of curves up, but on the F30, it's like square and flat with the ground. And then with a front lip, it just cleans it up perfectly. The F32, you got to add the lip and it like fills in the gaps on the side to give you that flat bottom. But I like the F32 overall better. And the F32 taillights are better. Let's see, what else? What up? Thank you guys for jumping in. I have an M10 mat set up for my car at the moment. Do you get many people in the US that run it? No. Almost nobody runs methanol in the tank here. Not that I know of anyway. Everybody runs ethanol. The biggest problem with methanol is it's a lot more corrosive than ethanol. So all of those concerns that people have, like, can the stock fuel system handle ethanol? Will it rot out fuel lines and like all of these different things? It's increased with methanol. So that's why I'm not really a fan of running it through the stock fuel system. I would rather just spray it on the valves through port meth injection. But I think a lot of people do it and it works. Okay. It's just like additional risk, I guess. But most people in the US just run ethanol because we have it more readily available. So with running all those suspensions, what was the best daily driving and some spirited driving? Probably stock. I mean, the stock suspension has the most compliance. It's the softest. It gives you the most mechanical grip in most scenarios. Like when you make your car really low and really stiff, you'll find that going over bumps, like the car skips, right? And if the tires are not in contact with the ground, you do not have grip. There's no friction there. So if you really want performance, you need something that keeps the tires in contact with the ground. So from like a performance standpoint, usually that's better. Even for drag racing and stuff, most of the fastest cars have stock-ish suspension, maybe upgraded dampers, again, just to settle things, but they're not like lowered. They're not on coilovers and stuff. So it just depends. But I'm willing to sacrifice that peak performance or mechanical grip that I probably can't reach anyway for the looks. So that's why I got coilovers on the 440. Let's see, I just got a Flowmax turbo for my 2-port because of your video. Awesome, man. Yeah, you're going to enjoy it. I was just saying one of my buddies just installed one on his car, and he's just on pump gas in his Supra, and he loves it. So it should be a good kit. Just run logs, get your custom tune dialed in, and keep an eye on it. Let's see, our timing corrections, -3 degrees normal, when full wide open throttle, and near red line. Yeah, I mean, it happens. It doesn't always happen. It shouldn't always happen, and it shouldn't always be the same cylinder, but it's all dependent on fuel quality. And usually your tune can dial it out, but what's going to happen is you're going to get your tune dialed in, and then 6 months later, you're going to run logs, and they're not going to look exactly the same because the conditions change. It's different temperature. Your intake filter is a little more clogged. Your spark plugs are a little more worn, all of that stuff. So it's not really the end of the world, personal opinion. Is there any real difference between the pistons? Not that I know of. I haven't really dug into a lot of the aftermarket solutions. I know most people run CP, but they should both work, especially if they're both OEM spec. They're just forged and stronger. Appreciate you guys supporting. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in. I'll probably do this for maybe another 20 minutes. We've been on for a while, man. I didn't even realize how long we've been on here. Instagram is so hard to navigate on a live stream. All I want to do is scroll. Let's see. All right. Can I run full E85 on the MHD Stage 2 HPFP with a TU pump? Yep. The tune is designed for a TU pump, so everything built into it is designed for the TU pump. And I'll have a video that will be coming out demonstrating that. So you guys saw my video with the stock high pressure fuel pump. I'll be making one with the TU pump as well. So that'll help confirm it for you guys. Thoughts on the way the S58 sounds? It's very similar to the S55, guys. Can we be real with each other? Is this a safe space? The S58 does not sound great. And it's largely, it is because of the length of the exhaust being different, I feel like, but also a lot of BMW M engines just seem to have valve trains that sound very bad. And it's a part of what allows it to rev really high. but it's been that way ever since the E46. Like, that car sounds horrible. It can rev high, it makes good power, it flows a lot of air, but I feel like it's something that they do in the valve train that just makes it sound really tinny, really raspy. And it doesn't have like the harmonics that most high revving engines have. You know, I don't know. I understand it works, and maybe it's a combination of Valvetronic and everything else working together compared to other engines that have more traditional cylinder heads, but it just doesn't sound good, man. So hopefully they can figure something out, but a twin turbo 6-cylinder, I think, is just kind of overkill personally. And you can tell by the way they package it and try to squeeze everything in there. You know, one intake is 6 inches long, the other is 3 feet long. One downpipe is half the length of the other. One charge pipe is twice as long as the other. It's just, it's not ideal for efficiency or optimization or anything. So I'm a fan of the single turbo cars. Is rear wheel drive better than X drive? Or overall, do you prefer rear wheel drive over all wheel drive? So I've come to love rear wheel drive. Like I said, I come from majority front wheel drive platforms. And if you guys have owned a high powered front wheel drive car, you know, you're like, you know, Northern Light is all wheel drive. Like, everybody wants to do an all wheel drive swap or get into an all wheel drive car. But since I moved into the BMW, I was planning on getting an Audi, but none of the Audis came in manual that I wanted. So I ended up getting a BMW. And I figured if I'm getting a BMW, I might as well get rear wheel drive, get something different, and get something that the platform is based on anyway. And I love it. It's been awesome. That's why I got the 340 and rear wheel drive as well. I still have an X drive car, but it's an X5, so it's not really a fair comparison as far as you know, the performance standpoint. But I just like rear wheel drive driving dynamics. It matches how I enjoy driving. But if all you want to do is like launches on the street and stuff like that, then X drive is hard to beat. And if you need to drive in snow and like really crappy weather, X drive is hard to beat. So, but luckily I don't have to deal with that. Let's see. I have a manual 340. Should I go with the stage 3 clutch or the N54 clutch option? I'm assuming you mean like the 335 IS clutch. I have that clutch in my car and it's awesome. It drives well, it makes no extra noise, and it holds a lot of torque, but it's not bulletproof. So if you plan on launching your car or driving it like really hard, generating a lot of heat, that's not the clutch for you. You'll want a stage 3 clutch. Me, I just do highway pulls, rarely do like burnouts or anything like that. I just enjoy like revving through the gears and letting it stretch its legs on the highway, getting up to speed. So it works well for me. But I have mechanical sympathy for it. I know I can't just beat it senseless. It's the same reason like I haven't used anti-lag. I think it'll be awesome if they release no lift shifting for our cars, but I don't know if I plan on using it because, again, I don't want to tear up the clutch. So, yeah, it's just something you got to be aware of. It's not bulletproof, but it does hold a lot more torque than the stock one. I think the E46 M3 engine and the S55 got voted the worst sounding M engines ever made. I believe it, man. And granted, what is it, the S54? That's in the E46. That one probably sounds worse. It does sound worse. NA sounds worse than boosted, but the S55 is a very close second. So I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea, man. And like I said, I enjoy other aspects of my car other than just straight line speed or, you know, some performance metric. It needs to be something I enjoy looking at, something I enjoy driving, hearing, you know, all of that. So it's not the car for me, not the platform or engine for me. I have a dumb question. Do you know any tuners that also tune Eco Pro or provide any high mile per gallon apps? maps. I'm pretty sure most tuners can do that. And I mentioned this earlier. I mean, my custom tune through Rod Sutphin can also be modified through EcoPro. I never use it, so I never asked him to touch it or modify anything. But he can adjust your shift maps. He can adjust when it goes into like the hypermilling mode and stuff like that. So maybe reach out for a transmission tune, because when you're not on the throttle and you're just cruising around, there's not really a lot to tune. Most people don't touch it. So I'm sure there are things that you can modify in the DME for that, but I think a transmission tune would probably go farther. Going pure 850 soon on my Mark V. Any recommendations on heat management? It really just depends on your power goals. If you want to push more than, say, 650, like it's probably a good idea to upgrade your intake manifold. Outside of that, there isn't really a whole lot that you have to do. I have a heat exchanger on my car, but it didn't provide a significant improvement in temperatures, so I don't necessarily recommend it, but it doesn't hurt. It did help bring temperatures down quicker, though. Like, it helps prevent heat soak, but it doesn't make IATs cooler during a pull, if that makes sense. So like after the pull, the temps drop right back down. And if you're doing back-to-back pulls, it'll make it a little more consistent, but it's not going to make it like a lot faster or a lot cooler during a pull. Let's see, do you like the latest S63? To me, the B58 sounds better. I mean, I'm a fan of the B58 sound. I think naturally aspirated V8s probably sound better than OEM boosted V8s. Maybe with like bigger turbos or something, it would sound a little nuttier. But a lot of OEM twin turbo V8s don't really have a lot of V8 sound and don't really have a lot of turbo sound. So, I mean, they don't sound bad, but yeah, I can see how you feel like the B58 sounds better. I mean, I really like how my car sounds, and all it has is a muffler delete. I didn't change anything. Like it has a resonator still, but generally it's like the B58 sounds good. It just needs to be opened up so you can hear it, right? So I like that aspect of it too. It doesn't really need a lot of exhaust tuning or anything to sound good. Let's see. Does anyone dial in with you for PCV delete project? I'm not sure what you mean, man. You might need to reword that one for me on the PCV delete stuff. I do have a PCV delete on both cars. I run the Ross Racing PCV delete, if that's what you're asking. What do you recommend for a Gen 1 intake manifold? I mean, RK AutoWorks has been great for me. I installed it on my car. You guys saw the DIY and everything, so I always recommend reaching out to them. Their V2 manifold's a lot better than the V1. And I am still running 5W30. So I ran, like I said, 0W20, then I ran 5W40, then I landed on 5W30. I would run 0W30. I think that would be the best of both worlds, but Liqui Moly doesn't make one, and I buy it through FCP. Somebody actually did show me there is an OEM 0W30 BMW oil on FCP, but since I've been using the Liqui Moly, I just stick with that. And all of my oil analysis have been coming back good. So do a B58 delete. I did. That's why the engine is not being shown right now. I closed the hood. So our car actually, it's not naturally aspirated. It's not boosted. It just runs on the transmission and a couple AAA batteries. Let's see, on your video about the spool fuel latest performance and tunes, you said that if injectors spray more fuel, it may not be good for everyday driving. So do you think with XDI injectors, it will require some changes? Okay, yeah, that's a good topic. So, I mean, we talked about earlier that you're going to need custom settings to run bigger injectors because the car tries to calculate how much fuel to inject based on all the readings for boost and temperature and all of that stuff. So it needs to know how much fuel is spraying and like the size of the injector to calculate that effectively. if your injectors are too big, it's not going to be able to effectively control your idle. It can stumble a little bit. Almost sounds like, an aggressive cam, like when it's trying to manage airflow and it's kind of surging and you feel that lobe and you can hear it. That's not necessarily good. It sounds cool, but it means that the car is not running very efficiently. It's basically just fighting to keep running. So that's the issue with the bigger injectors. Now, that being said, that was just Spool's implementation. They said that above 50% additional flow, it seemed like it was more difficult to tune a smooth idle. So that's why their injectors only add 50%. But maybe other tuners find a way around that. I don't know. So that's their recommendation. That's what they provide. If you want more than that, you can reach out to them for custom, injectors to be made. Basically, that's what they said. You can just ask for it. Or, there might be other options like XDI that have higher flowing injectors. And if they find a way to make it idle fine, then, it should be okay. But that's the concept behind it. You don't want to hook up a garden hose to your fuel rail, right? Like, it shouldn't just be dumping fuel in there. It needs to be small enough where you can control it and meter in the flow of fuel to match the airflow that's coming in. Otherwise, you'll have crappy idle. Think the same thing that would happen with a leaky injector, right? If it's spraying too much fuel when you're at idle, it's going to misfire. It's not going to run well. Let's see. Hello, Kern. I've been watching your channel for a while. And one question I have is my car came out impound sitting for 4 months. Is there any specific maintenance? Best thing to do if your car's been sitting for 4 months is just to run the fuel out, cycle the fuel. I wouldn't beat on it a whole lot. And then once you get new fuel in the car, run some logs and just make sure everything's good. But our cars do pretty well sitting. I mean, I won't lie, my car sits a lot. I don't drive it through winter a lot when the temperatures are cold. It's pretty much a summer setup. I drive it in winter sometimes, but I don't have winter tires for the car. I don't have any setup for it to go through snow or anything like that. So, especially in winter, it sits a lot and it wakes up fine in March when I start driving it more often. But I usually do drive it like a couple times. If there are a couple warm days in like December, January, or whatever, I'll drive it. Let's see, can you run fully 85 on a TU pump? Yes, I did 3 years ago. So if you scroll back on my videos back in 2020, when the whole world was coming to an end, I was breaking the mold and running full E85 on a TU pump. So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely possible. You just need a tune that takes account of the E85. So, what else? Has anyone contacted me for an evap delete project? Yes. But everything's moving really slow. The main thing that I need right now is to delete those caps that are on my car and install a plug on the intake manifold. I'm probably just going to make one because I don't feel like waiting anymore. But I knew a couple people that said they were working on making plugs. They had prototypes made and all this stuff. And then it's just like nothing came out of it. But the main thing, of course, is you need to plug the holes on your intake manifold if you have any. And then you need to delete the codes in your tune. So I'm going to be going the next step on the 440. I guess that'll be one more change I make on the 440 is fully deleting the evap system to clean up the engine bay and show off the intake manifold. But yeah, that'll be coming soon. I'll make a video on that when I do it. Let's see, opinion on the M5 E60 sound. That's probably the best sounding M car. That's real. That's a good one. Yeah, the M5 or the M6. I don't know. I can't really think of any other M cars that really just sound amazing. I mean, of course, like the V8 sounds good. The S65 sounds good. But the V10 sounds really good. So, yeah, I'm a fan of that. Where's Kid417? I'm surprised you guys can't hear him. They're starting to wake up. I can hear them through the door. I'm in the garage and I can hear people being insane inside the house. But yeah, he's here. It sounds like he just woke up 15 minutes ago. All right, we got, let's see, 5 more minutes. Again, thank you guys for jumping on. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this more often. I'm going to try to come on here with actual topics as well, so we can kind of do like real detailed discussion about stuff. I know normally these are just Q&As, but I want to try something a little bit different. And in the future, I have a couple other ideas for these as well. So just keep an eye out for them. I'll post them up when I do more. Also, if you guys want any like background info or anything on my build, if you need additional technical support or anything, I try to answer DMs, but I can't get to everybody every day. Feel free to join the Patreon. It's $5 a month. And I just show you guys a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and things that are coming up. You get previews of mods that are going on the car. And I prioritize technical support for those guys since they're supporting monetarily. So, you know, you can send me direct messages and stuff through there. And I do giveaways. So I give away parts to the Patreon members. So feel free to join. All right. Yeah. A couple more questions. So I just did my spark plugs. When in drive and idling apart, there are random stutters. Not a lot, but every couple minutes. Yeah, I guess I would double check your work. Make sure you torqued everything down properly. Make sure all your coil packs are screwed down so they're not lifted up off of the spark plugs. And you can also inspect the inside of your coil pack. Make sure the spring isn't damaged or anything so that it's getting good contact with your spark plug. But usually after you replace spark plugs, it idles better. So it's not something that I would say is typical. I know some people too, if you ordered from like, I hate to say it, but FCP or something, a lot of times they get banged around when they're shipping. So you might get a bad plug or the gap might be off. So you can double check the spark plug gap. Will race fuel like MS-109 make more power than an E50 blend? It will support more power through a fuel system that's limited, right? So if you have a turbo that can make more power than your fuel system can support on E50, then race gas will allow you to increase how much power you're making without changing your fuel system. So hopefully that makes sense. Like on an E50 blend, you're usually limited, especially like if you're on a TU pump or something. So if you have MS-109, you'll be able to push it farther. And that's how some people say like, oh, they're making all this power and running these crazy times without any ethanol. Usually they're running race gas because it gives you the same gains without the same limitations that come with running ethanol. I don't necessarily recommend running anything that's leaded because that can tear things up. Let's see, modal versus liquid moly. Yeah, so this is a pretty common question, and I know a lot of people kind of misinterpret how oil works because when they get their certifications, it's going to be one of those things where you pay for it, but you're not buying a certification. You still have to meet the specs, right? So I think a lot of people say, oh, this oil is certified here, this oil is certified there, but this one's really better. They just didn't pay for the certification. That very well could be the case. Usually I just recommend any LL01 certified oil. If it's certified by BMW to work, then you basically have the guarantee that it meets the minimum requirements. But there probably are plenty of other oils that work and meet the requirements as well. They'll get good oil analysis and all of that, but I don't lose sleep worrying about that. I just need something that works and is safe. The engine itself is reliable. But yeah, everybody swears by something different. I use liquid moly because I can get it for free through FCP Euro. Crazy, I know. But it works. And I'm not interested in spending my next 10 years of life trying different oils and seeing which one is marginally better when it's not necessarily going to give me any improvement in performance or reliability. See, should I gap B58 spark plugs? Nope. Stock gap should work. Make sure the gap is right, though. It should be between like 0.028 and 0.030 inches. That's the OEM gap spec. And then just throw them in there, but no need to reduce the gap. I'm running stock gap on both of my cars. One's making 400 horsepower, one's making almost 650, and they both run well. What do you think about the Vargas GC turbo? I'm not really a fan of it anymore. I used to recommend it, but I've seen a lot of failures recently. I know it's a really good bargain, but I think there are so many other turbos that work well now. It's not really worth it. It's kind of a gamble. And you're not going to make a lot of power with it. If you're not running E85, you're not going to make a lot of power with it. If your plan is to run pump gas and you want to get closer to 550, you're going to want like a bigger hybrid, like a pure 850 or a Flomax. Yeah. So you're saying the same thing. The turbo itself is rated for around 600. So if you want close to 600, especially without E85, I wouldn't go with a GC. It's just a little too small. All right, one last question. Let's see. Oh, I think I'm all caught up. Cool. Well, that makes it easy. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for joining. Like I said, I'll try to do these more often. Let me know if you guys have any ideas. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions, messages, whatever. And I will see what I can do. Oh, this is a good one. Hold on. I got one more question. So we got the 21A02D combustion control irregular. Now, this is something that is really common, but there isn't a lot of data on what the fix is. We were actually having a discussion with some tuners on it because they all had kind of different opinions on what could cause it. But it is relatively common on the B58. I just haven't made a video on it since we don't have a lot of information. Unfortunately, most people get it fixed by going to the dealer and getting a software update. Usually those are the people that say they see the code, but it's not actually causing an issue. So if it's not actually stumbling on idle or like surging or, struggling to stay running, a lot of people get the update and the code goes away. And the thought behind that is they're probably literally just lowering the threshold for that code to come up, which sounds crazy. Like it's basically throwing a code when nothing's wrong. So they just slow it down or disable it, I guess, a little bit. But that's what it seems like. Now, other people, they actually have an issue where the car is stumbling, and usually that's Vanos related. So I would check your Vanos actuator, check your central valve if it's not your actuator. Usually those also throw like camshaft codes, so that gives you a little bit better of a guide to where the problem could be. But if you're just seeing that code and there's not actually any problem, usually you have to bring it in to get a software update and then basically go back and get your DME bench unlocked, which is annoying, I know. Oh, I didn't even read your whole question. This is bad. So now you're saying you followed the BMW bulletin and you replaced both actuators and the code is still there. Yeah, that's usually where I go. The only other option could be potentially your central valve. And this is assuming that you're actually having an issue where the car is stumbling. Unfortunately, that's a little harder to replace and access, but that would be probably the next thing I would check. Cool. All right, guys, gonna wrap it up here. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will do this again. I'm gonna be pushing this more and more on YouTube since that's where most of the viewers are. So trying to do this dual Instagram thing for now, but in the future it might just be YouTube only. So subscribe, stick around, join in. 6466. Easy. Yeah, thanks for joining in, tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Appreciate it. Take care.